Great Scott.
I know, this is heavy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Underrated. We are the Undercast Company, and of course, as per usual, I'm joined by my awesome, lovely hosts, Ariel Ortiz,
Hello.
Derick McDuff,
Hey guys, how's it going?
and myself, Alan Torres. So how's everybody doing? I hope everyone's enjoying the Summer of Sequels. And today's the final episode of the Summer of Sequels. And it's going to be one of my personal favorite sequels. I know we did another personal one prior. It was the part two to a series, and this one is going to be a part three. And it's one of my favorite part threes ever since I was a kid. It's Back to the Future Part 3, directed by Robert Zemeckis, starring Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Mary Steenburgen, Thomas F. Wilson, Leah Thompson, and Elizabeth Shue. It came out back in 1990 and had a budget of $40 million and unfortunately only made back $246 million at the box office. So I guess you can say it was a success. But I've always personally felt that it was an underrated sequel, especially a part three. I know a lot of the time we get a lot of great part twos, you know, Godfather Part 2, Scream 2, Empire Strikes Back, yada yada. So my pick, I wanted to pick a part three because usually even a part three is even more rare of being as good as its previous two predecessors. So if you don't know, Back to the Future 3 is the last of the trilogy. Marty ends up getting trapped again in 1955, and he has to figure out a way to go back to 1855 to save the dog because he finds out that Mad Buford Tannen shot him down over a an order of $80, right? I believe $80.
Yeah, $80.
$80.
$80.
Mad Dog Tannen.
No, Tannen. So yeah, and pretty much he ends up in the beginning of the movie, finds a 55 Doc, and he helps him find out that there's another DeLorean in that same time, and it sends him back in time to 1885, and that's where he goes to rescue Doc. But there is an issue. The Doc finds love this time around. So now it's trying to figure out how to get back to the future, but also with Doc being in love with Clara Clayton. So yeah, well, that's my little thing real fast. I want to hear what you guys think of the movie.
Well, I think that you really hit it, Alan, when you're like, a really good part three is a rare thing because I think that trilogies are inherently kind of just difficult to end. It's kind of hard to like stick the landing, especially when and Back to the Future 3 the Back to the Future sequels kind of invented this, where it's like you have one standalone movie, and then you're like, okay, we're gonna like retroactively be like, this is actually the first part of a trilogy, and then you have two more movies. And a lot of the time when they do that, you know, with like the Matrix sequels or like the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels, the parts 2 and 3 just feel like one long ass movie, and 2 and 3 do not feel distinct from each other. But this one, part 3, actually feels very distinct from part 2. Like part 3 is an entirely separate genre, in fact, from parts 1 and 2, and it does kind of end the story on a really kind of just, you know, it feels thematically correct. It feels like it closes a lot of things out. It's not perfect. There's a couple things that I feel like they do kind of just like add to Marty's character in the second one to give him more conflict that get resolved in this one. Like how he just really hates being called a chicken, which is never a thing in the first one.
I think I know why that happens, though.
So they can give him some character growth.
No. I think it is because of what happens in 1955 with his dad standing up to Biff. He's essentially has taught his sons that the same way that he had taught them to be cowards in the past one. Like that's why, you know, his family wasn't successful or stuff like that. That's why his son didn't take initiative, or his oldest son didn't take initiative. His daughter, you know, wasn't outgoing enough to have relationships with guys and stuff like that, didn't have that confidence. But because George McFly stood up to Biff all those years ago, he instilled that confidence into his children. So that's why
But Marty's
Marty.
memory doesn't change. Marty doesn't get new memories.
Yeah,
His
I
the
think
rest of his family does, but he still remembers everything. He doesn't change.
I think it's like in still. I think that's what they were trying to get at. That.
I don't know. I think that's kind of. I mean, I feel like they're just like, yeah, we just need to give Marty some conflict. He doesn't really have a conflict in the first one. He's just kind of like a protagonist that never changes or learns anything in the first one, which I kind of love. And they do kind of give him an arc in this, which is fine because he does have that arc with like Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers and everything about the race, and you know, um, I think that I'm much more interested in Doc's arc, especially in this movie, because he has that kind of love and everything, and you know they kind of close the book on time travel and have it kind of just be about like you control your own destiny. Because I think there's very few movies that are not envisioned as trilogies from the get go, like your Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. That's a whole other thing. But if you're like, okay, this is a trilogy and we're going to close it out here. This is going to be the third, the end of the trilogy, which we didn't really plan. Even like Return of the Jedi is probably the weakest Star Wars. Like it doesn't really hold up. I feel like to the first and like to the Empire Strikes Back. But this one, I think that you can really put it in the same category as Back to the Future 1 and 2. It does kind of do. It does. You do feel like you can watch them all back to back and feel fulfilled. And it also feels, while it is part of a larger whole, it does feel like it's its own story. It's its own one part of. It is a part 3. It is like, hey, here's Back to the Future Part 3. Here's Doc and Marty going on this other adventure, but it doesn't just feel like the second half of a long movie, like The Matrix Revolutions or like Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End do, or like so many other just kind of like endings do. It's like, yeah, this is its own thing, and I think that it's really clever. I'll get more into it, but I do think it's really clever how they basically just take the first movie and do the first movie again. Because the second movie is like, okay, we're looking at the first movie from a different angle, but this one's like, okay, we're going to take the plot of the first movie, which is a science fiction movie, and we're going to and this is that's not to say this isn't sci-fi, but it takes the genre and switches it. It's like, okay, we're going to do the tropes of a Western movie now. We're going to have like it be like a cart, like a they're gonna have a train heist at the end, and that's gonna be the kind of thing that gets. And they're gonna have all this Western stuff and the duels and everything, which kind of get foreshadowed in the second. But they do a lot of good foreshadowing in the second one that pay off really well in this one. And there's a lot of great callbacks to all three of them. But I think it's just really smart to just take, hey, let's do one again, but now it's a Western, and just kind of doing it a little bit differently. Where everything you've seen all this before, but it's in a fresh way, which I think is really a smart decision by Zemeckis and all the other writers and producers and stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, I think that we're, all three of them have different like kind of like time periods to play with. The first one is the past, the 50s, and then you have the future in the second one, and then you have the Western in the third one, and they all have those like moments in them, like like essentially like the diner moment, where Biff comes in, and every iteration of Biff, um and yeah, I mean, this movie is definitely like I just because I wanted to like we've recently seen the first one, but then I wanted to like, and I've seen the second one before, and the third one of course, but I wanted to like rewatch the second one before I watched the third one, just to have that kind of flow into it, see coming off, and just might as well see all three straight almost essentially. And yeah, like it works definitely both ways. Like you could definitely see like the second and third one together, and you have that kind of like very flowing into storyline. All three essentially flow into each other because they're kind of like taking place over the course of, for Marty, like a week, and then you have, but for the second and third one, especially since they were filmed like one after the other, you kind of get that a little bit more of that flow into it. And you could definitely enjoy it that way, or you could enjoy just watching it, picking up and watching watching it for the first time and rewatching it for the first time. That way. Uh, and yeah, it is an enjoyable third movie. Unlike Derek, the Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie. I love Return of the Jedi more than Empire. I'm an outlier, I know. Um, but yeah, like it comes down to, like, for me, like I like conclusions, but I also like I like the themes of Return of the Jedi a bit more. Um, but other than that, I think that the third one, while the second one, in my opinion, is the best one, I think the third one actually has a bit more heart than the previous two. Especially with, the addition of Doc Brown, but then also, like you mentioned before, you get that character, building of Marty, also with the chicken and stuff like that, and then you get the callback to. That's another reason why it kind of like flows a bit better with watching 2 and 3, like back to back, is like you get that callback of the Royals Royce, and like it's leading up to that. You have that lead up as a viewer to, like, he needs to, like, stop this, learn this lesson to, like, cool his jets and not be offended when somebody tries to call him out, or it's gonna, like, ruin his life, it's gonna ruin his family's life and stuff. um but yeah, I think it's definitely a really great conclusion to a story that, like, you, of course, like, we would all want more stories of time travel with Marty and Doc Brown, but it definitely ends in a way where they both, like, you're fine with both of them ending how they are, like Doc Brown finds love, and then I love how he signs, he essentially tells Jennifer and Marty, like, don't worry about the future. It's not set in stone. Like, it will change, but that's okay. Our futures are what they will be, and we'll find, like, joy in that, joy in it anyway, just keep on going and stuff. So I really enjoyed that, like, the growth of Doc Brown in that, going from the first, the second, and the third, is like he thinks, like, he thought of time as being kind of concrete, or, like, kind of like, which has become like a trope and was called back in Avengers Endgame of of Black to the Future was wrong, but that sharp
So
split.
Back to the Future is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, of, like, he thought of it as like a sharp line, cut off and stuff like that. But like, even to him, it comes down to, like, which is like a unifying, kind of become a unifying theme of, like, time ebbs and flows, and yeah, there's kind of a beauty into that theme, and I really do love that kind of theme of time travel when they get to that conclusion of, time ebbs and flows. So yeah, definitely enjoyed it. Of course, it's Back to the Future, but yeah.
I think one of the highlights for me, I mean, I can't say I have a favorite Back to the Future. I kind of just love all of them equally. Um, but I think one of my favorite things is that, there's the character growth, like you guys were saying. I really love Marty's character growth, especially like you guys had mentioned about, like, the race with the flea and all that. And I also love that, like, that these movies all kind of have, like, each movie is about a certain character. If you think about it, like, the first one is about Marty's parents. The second one is pretty much about, like, Marty and Biff. Like, they're kind of these, like, arch enemies almost through time. And then part three, it's Doc and Claire. So I kind of always been a fan that, like, each of these movies is about them. Obviously, Marty and Doc are in all of them, but the themes are focused on specific characters in each one. And I think one of my favorite aspects about this one is that you never really had Doc and Marty from the same time, like, have an adventure yet. Like, first one, it's 1955 Doc, and then the second one, Yeah, it's kind of, the Doc and Marty and Marty's girlfriend going to the future, but then kind of like all hell breaks loose, and then like they all kind of get separated, and Marty kind of goes into this like he goes back to 1985 in this like hell version of 1985. But the third one, I finally feel like our heroes are finally like together, like they're the same timeline version, even though they're over in stuck in 1885. I've always loved where like you can just see like they've grown over this matter of time, where like Marty's in the clown cowboy suit and he's getting pretty much hanged by Mad Dog Cannon, and then just Doc has this sick ass like Tesla sniper rifle, and he just puts it down, and then like he just looks all like kind of a little seasoned, a little used to the time he's in, and just that scene of just like like they just have this scene of like, oh my god, my best friend, I'm finally hero my best friend kind of thing, and like Doc picks him up off the ground, and Marty's like in his stupid cowboy suit. And one of my favorite, absolute favorite time travel like lines I've ever heard is Doc goes, "Who the hell dressed you?" And then he like Marty like slaps him on the shoulder, and he's like, "You did." And it's just
Yeah,
great. It's
yeah.
just like, yeah, like it's just one of those fun little time travel things, and I just love how they like hang out and like they just kind of go through it in 1885. Like they finally feel like they're going through their own time travel adventure, but it's the same timeline ones, because it's always kind of like passing ships.
Mhm.
Or like in the first one, it's 1955, Doc and Marty, and like even at the end of that one, Doc is like, I have to wait 30 years to be able to talk to you about this. And that was always kind of bittersweet, because you're like, oh yeah, I mean, it's gonna be cool, but it sucks that he has to go the long way around,
Mhm.
and Marty's gonna be there instantaneously. But yeah, and then like I love I think I kind of love the romance a lot between Doc and Clara, just kind of like just souls that were never able to meet because of time, kind of thing. And then like just it felt like kind of maybe, yes, time, like we learned the errors of time travel in the second one, but I feel like this one it's kind of like they're trying to fix everything, they're trying to take care of everything, and like love still kind of finds a way. Like I've always felt like the main theme of all these movies is love, essentially. The first
The
one,
power of love.
the
That's
power
the
of
power
love.
of love.
There you
Yep.
go, the power of love. So yeah, it's so much fun. And then also too, I mean, this one we finally get to see like I love the DeLorean's kind of character growth as well. Like you see it come from just this badass built DeLorean, and then the second one it can fly, and then
Mhm.
in this one it has like the cool 50s wheels and that weird contraption on the hood, and then it kind of gets another evolution of just being this DeLorean with train wheels, and it's getting pushed, and then finally one of the biggest, coolest things I've ever seen that blew my mind as a child was seeing a train version of the time machine, just this massive fucking like steampunk kind of time machine, and I thought that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen as a kid. Like I was, my imagination was already captured by the DeLorean, and it's not one of my favorite cars of all time. But like seeing the train version, I was like, holy shit! Like
Mhm.
that's just because you kind of get this bittersweet feeling, because you're like, all right, well everything's good. Doc's like, I'm gonna stay back in time with Clara. That's how it's gonna be. And it's like, all right, man. That's I guess I'm gonna go back to the future with my girl, destroy the DeLorean, and then just almost like just one last quick like, hey, we're not done yet. You kind of just and they're like, where's the fucking train coming from? And then boom, it's the train time machine. And you just, for one last instance, you get to see like the time machine one more time, and again it captures your imagination, where you're like, "Ah, I'd love to see more, I'd love to see more," but that's the end of that story. And you know what, I couldn't have it any other way. I just, I feel like it's just a great, and then the whole Western thing. I'm a sucker for Westerns. I think this might be one of my favorite Western movies of all time too. So
Yeah, and you guys know that I like love just genre mashup movies, so I was all about this, like a sci-fi western with time travel. Like I'm on board, but I think you definitely hit it, Alan. How you're like you want to see more, but you're glad it's done because they know when to end it. And Zemeckis and all those guys are like, Zemeckis and Gale, they're like, you know what, this is it. They even had the shirts made that just had like the 4 logo like crossed out because they're like no, like this is done. We've told our story, because you can keep making movies and movies and movies and movies forever and just get diminishing returns. But it's like, no, this is the story. It's complete. It's everyone's arcs are done, and it's like Endgame. Like we'll have more Marvel movies, but like the story that was Endgame and like the story of like Iron Man and Captain America and a lot of other characters is kind of like closed out. And I love that. I'm like, okay, good. We've closed. I would love to, Back to the Future 4 would be so much fun. And that's why I have so much mixed feelings about a fourth Matrix movie, because I'm like, you told the story. The story was done. And I feel like they kind of did that with like the first Back to the Future. The story was kind of done, but they're like, you know what? Let's give you a little more. We'll give you a little bit extra. We'll give you 2 movies where, and I'm like, good. That's all I need, and it's done. There's like, Zemeckis said, as long as I'm alive, no one is ever going to do a Back to the Future 4, and it's just a perfect trilogy. It doesn't need to be anymore, and I think that maybe nowadays, like some filmmakers are starting to learn, like, okay, we can just like end things. You can have like a successful trilogy, like the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy, just like whatever, it just be done and have the story be told and complete and have everyone's arcs be resolved and just kind of like have the heroes just ride off into the sunset. And I love that we get that for Doc and Marty, and their future is still unwritten. That's like how the movie ends, and it's such a just perfect, beautiful ending.
Yeah. Yeah, I know it definitely is, and then it is still like the first one was, leaves it open ended to like they might have, like more adventures, but hey, like they are going to go off and they are, they have their own lives. They might intercross, one day, but for now, they're essentially like said bye to each other, or like we're going to live our own lives, kind of thing, and that's kind of I think a better way to end this series than the first one did. The first one, of course, left it open ended. They weren't expecting to make a sequel until it came out and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, that definitely tying it up this way, with how they did, is definitely a lot more effective and stuff, and like, yeah, like, well, I mean, I guess Marvel is a special case because it branches off and stuff like that, but I do enjoy close.
Books. That's comic.
Yeah, it's comic books, I guess. Yeah, but yeah, I do enjoy it, definitely, like a strong telling of things. I know like just by watching certain TV shows, that things could get lost, track, stories can lose its traction, or they'll just like run out of steam and not know how to end it. And so yeah, in those cases, like it is a good idea to just have a few seasons, leave people wanting more than less is like always the good rule of thumb, I think, for any kind of entertainment.
Mm.
But
Because who's watching The Simpsons these days?
yeah.
Like The Simpsons has been on at literally as long as I've been alive. Like they premiered 1989, the same year I was born. Also, Back to the Future 2 came out that year. And it just keeps going and going and going. And like people love The Simpsons, but who watches it now? Why it's still on, but no one cares. And that's like a best case scenario for something going on this long. Usually, it's not that people don't care. Usually, people start to hate it when things go on forever. Like look at like a show like Heroes. Heroes was great, and then they just kept making more and more and more, and just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And you just got to know. You set a time for yourself and be like, "This is the story. It's done. We have it planned. We have 2 and 3 plans, so we can do the things that we want to do, and we can wrap it up." And I'm glad that's what we're doing with our summer sequels. We had our movies for the summer, and this is where it's coming to an end. This is our, the movie about Back to the Future 3 is our Back to the Future 3. We're wrapping it all up. We're going to ride off into the sunset, in our sequel series. We're going to still talk about movies, but we're done with our sequel series. We know when to end it. We're not going to keep going forever on this series.
Yeah. Damn, Derick,
Oh.
we're contrasting a lot right now, because I totally like with Heroes, I'm like, it's only because they always thought that they were ending, like they were always
And the writer's strike and all that stuff.
strike.
Oh man, the writer's strike, that got real bad. But even before that, even like season 2 of Heroes was, I don't know, I had a really rough time. Season 1 of Heroes is incredible, but it got
I like
tough
it.
for me to watch after that.
I if a bit of tangent. They should have had Skylar be Peter Petrelli, or the third Petrelli brother. It would have been fucking awesome to keep him that way. And you had like then this weird dynamic between Skylar and
Siler.
Yeah, sorry. Shout out to my friend Skylar. But no, Siler and Peter, and like and then they took
They introduced a lot. They always were like, "Here's a good
this is
idea,"
when the
and then they just like
fucked
went
up.
off
This
and
is
did
when
something else.
when they stopped Peter's OP-ness, because he was awesome as an OP character. But okay, we'll digress.
Yeah, I could
I
go
could
on
go
for
on.
about the problems with Heroes.
I
That's a
love
whole other
Heroes.
podcast.
I love Heroes. Heroes is one of my first like pop culture kind of like not obsession, but like what got me into pop culture was Heroes and Scrubs were my two like nerd awakenings. So, yeah.
I feel like the 2000s had like I feel like the 2000s had like absolute bangers of like television shows,
Oh
like
yeah,
across all the boards. Like I feel like that kind of became the precursor to like now, like how like we have so many TV shows that are absolutely like just they might as well be as big as films, with Netflix and all this streaming stuff. I feel like every other day you just find somebody just like, oh my god, did you see Loki? Did you see, Captain America and the Winter Soldier? Like all this stuff, like it's so big now. I feel like the 2000s really was just like, hey man, Heroes, Scrubs, like you said, like just so many Lost, like just all these bangers just kept coming out. Where this is back in the day when we had water coolers and stuff. Now we have the automatic fucking machine that just fills up your water bottle. Like so,
yeah.
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 It really was the precursor to the golden age of television. And you started to get it a little bit sooner in like, kind of the premium cable world. You had, HBO and like Showtime doing shows like that. But then, once it started, like ABC coming out with Lost and, those kind of shows really brought it more to the mainstream because they were on basic cable and anybody can see them. And they, shows like Heroes and Lost brought this kind of like sci-fi element to just kind of the mainstream, and I think that's a big part of the reason why we are in such a age of TV nowadays is because of stuff like that.
Yeah.
Now, total tangent.
Well, we bringing it back. Movies like Back to the Future, kind of have inspired pop culture, and including like television shows like Heroes and Lost and stuff like that.
Because Heroes was all about, and Lost too. Also, they had a lot of time travel stuff, which, the future, people didn't do time travel movies really. Like they were not super successful. They were around, but they weren't like successful like they were like this until, Back to the Future. And then you had stuff like the Terminator and stuff. And you had all the Star Trek movies that held all the time travel where they go back to the 90s or the 80s to go find the whales or whatever. I fucking love that shit.
Yeah, no.
I mean, also too, we have like, I feel like it's just tough for time travel movies. I think you need to get what do they say, lightning in a bottle, but it's more like lightning hitting the clock tower at the right time. So, but I mean, I guess to kind of go back to everything, back to what you guys were saying about like rebooting stuff, is that I'm kind of glad that Back to the Future isn't in the vein to be rebooted or made a sequel for, because I think Robert Zemeckis said himself that he's like, I have the rights to it, and I think to be able to make something after the creator's gone, it's like, well, you have to wait till he dies, and then it's like 100 years after the fact. So
80
it's
or
like
something like that, yeah.
80 to 100 years. So it's like they won't be able to make, a Back to the Future remake until like the far off year of like 2185 or some shit. So it's gonna be a long, long time. So at least, in our lifetime, we're cool. And I'm kind of glad though, because I know there's a lot of reboots. I know there's or sequels, like there's a Karate Kid series, and they're doing He-Man now, which I thought was absolutely amazing. I love the He-Man reboot. But I'm kind of glad though, secretly, as much as I like reboots and stuff and sequels, I'm kind of glad that there isn't a reboot. I feel like the only time it's okay is when it's maybe done in comic form or video game form. Two really great examples is the Ghostbusters video game, where they kind of did a sequel to the movies, and Back to the Future itself. If anybody's out there listening and you don't know this, there is technically a non-canon version of Back to the Future 4 in video game form. It's just called Back to the Future the game, and it takes place right after Back to the Future Part 3. And it's a Telltale game, so it's really heavily story driven. They get a really great version of they really get they get a really good voice actor who could mimic Michael J. Fox's voice pretty damn well. Like it's almost like 100%. I think Christopher Lloyd comes back for the game as well. You can tell he's a little like older now, so his voice is a little gravelly, and it kind of centers a lot on Doc Brown's kind of like romance stuff. Like it's like, what if like he didn't get with Clara and he got with somebody else, and it kind of goes from the future to back in time, even further back in time. And one big spoiler for everybody, I know you guys are wondering, like, if I played the game probably like 8 years ago, but you do get Michael J. Fox back in the game, or in the game as a voice, and it's pretty awesome because you go so far back into like, I believe 1865, and you actually meet like Seamus McFly's like granddad, and he looks exactly like Martin McFly.
Just like all of the characters do in his.
Yeah, but like I mean, like he looks like he was like a direct like this was like Marty's main like ancestor kind of thing. Like I don't think it's Seamus McFly's, but it's like it's one of his ancestors. I can't remember, but it's Michael J. Fox. He reprises that role, and like they meet each other, and he's just so cool and collective. Like he's just okay with the time travel thing, but it's a really great story. And again, it's just a fun non-canon version of like of a part 4. But I think one of the greatest moments of it is I think they understand that it's not going to be part of the series, and they did their best they could. And there's a really awesome scene where it's all over, everyone goes back, and it kind of ends like Back to the Future 1, where Marty's like, oh, he's back with Jennifer on the porch, he has a sick 4x4, he's about to drive it, and then a DeLorean pulls up, and it's another Doc Brown from a different future, and he has like punk attire, and then you go, oh my god, so they're gonna set up a part 5, and then another DeLorean shows up, and you're like, what the hell? And it's another Doc Brown from an alternate timeline, and then you're like, no fucking way. I know I'm spoiling the game, but I mean it's like pretty old now. And then another, like, just all these DeLoreans keep showing up out of random time frames, and like Doc's like, Marty, you gotta come back with me. And I think it's like just a big fun joke, because at the end of the day, these movies are all comedies. Like they're not supposed to be taken so seriously, but now they're like just huge iconic. It's this huge iconic trilogy. But I feel like, if you're out there and you watch all 3 of them and you're like, I just need a little bit more, I'd suggest playing Back to the Future the game. It's a lot of fun. It's a pretty chill game too. It's mostly puzzles and you walk around as Marty, but it's a really great, fun, non-canon story.
There's a couple other non-canonical part 4s, which are the TV show, where it's like the kids, like the cartoon, where it's like every week they go to a different time. It's kind of like that 90s, how like in the 90s they were like every cartoon show had to like teach kids something. So it's kind of like one of those education type shows, like education. Yeah, and then there's also the ride that was at. No, but at the end it would be like, well, we'll teach you about this history thing, But then there's also the ride at Universal Studios. Did you guys ever go on that?
No,
never went on it. As one of the biggest fans.
Because I actually went on that before I ever saw Back to the Future. Because I saw Back to the Future first time when I was like 13 or something, and then I saw the sequels when I was like in high school. So I was like late to the game. Like when I saw 2 and 3, I was like, oh wow, I saw 2, and then like I didn't see 3 again for like 6 months, like until it came on TV. So I actually had the same experience of like the people who saw it in theaters, where I didn't get to see the 3rd one until a while after. I kind of thought it was cool. But originally, when I was a kid at Universal Studios, it was in this big like IMAX dome thing, and you're just like, it's like Doc Brown comes out, he's like, we've got it, we've got you all in this time travel DeLorean, and we're gonna go back, and you go to like dinosaur times, and Biff tries to hide. He's like, hey, buttheads, I'm stealing this time, and you get like almost eaten by a dinosaur and stuff. And they even had like a Doc Brown's like dinosaur fries outside of the ride you could go eat, and it was like it was Doc Brown's like fried chicken, but it was like dinosaur chicken, and like that was iconic. And so that ride, like, it's not around anymore, but the Universal I don't know if the restaurant is still, but the ride is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And like the ride, it was just so much. It was so much fun, just like Biff being like, "Buttheads, I'm gonna get you eaten by a T-Rex." So I don't know. This whole franchise is just so cool and so iconic. And yeah, Part 3 is one that gets, like, people always say like, "Oh, you know, Back to the Future 1 is my favorite, or Back to the Future 2 is my favorite." Nobody ever really says Back to the Future 3 is their favorite, but I think, you know, it is equally iconic and deserves to be talked about, especially with how creative it is, with, once again, you know, taking the plot of the first one, but just kind of giving it that switch. And it's something, and I think, you know, maybe more movies could learn from. Maybe, I think more movies should honestly just switch genres in the sequels. Just be like, and now for something completely different. Like, be like, okay, we did a sci-fi movie for Part 1, we're going to do a Western for Part 3, or whatever it might be. I would love to see more shit like this. And it's really the only series that manages to pull off a switch like this, or even probably tries.
Well, I mean, like Thor Ragnarok is kind of like that. It's similar in that way, where it kind of like has that break of like theme and of characters and stuff like that. But I think that's the closest that we've gotten. So, you know.
Yeah, and as much as I love Thor Ragnarok because it is such a departure, it is still the same genre pretty much. You know, like, it doesn't feel like it's a Western or something all of a sudden. And I would love to see like an MCU movie just be like, and now this is a Western. That is something cool the MCU does, is that they're like, okay, like, these are all movies set in the same universe, but like, here's the Ant-Man movies are like heist movies, and, you know, like Black Widow is like a spy thriller. So I do think, yeah, the Marvel movies in general do that pretty well. But not in like a series like this, where it's like, this is a direct sequel to something else. I would love to see more of that.
Yeah.
I think, again, with Back to the Future, it just has the benefit of being a time travel trilogy, where it's a little easier to get away with that. Because, I mean, if they had somehow in an alternate timeline decided to do Back to the Future 4 and 5 and 6, like another trilogy, just like, you know, with Star Wars, and they could have easily done like, hey, we're gonna go back in time to the, you know, the Dark Ages. We're gonna do a medieval type, and then you can go into another future where it's like an alternate, like, post-apocalyptic future, which I think that's what they were teasing in the Back to the Future game. And like, there's just so many like opportunities to like just change up the story. So I think that's the benefit of Back to the Future. But again, I'm just happy that they stuck with what they had, just the trilogy, nice and steady. And also, real quick for anybody, just like how I missed it, if you hopefully after this you go out and buy, you know, the 35th anniversary. Is it 35th anniversary? One of the most recent anniversary Blu-rays.
35. It would be 35.
35, perfect. Any anniversary Blu-rays or 4K, whatever. Most of the time, the special features will have the Back to the Future ride in it, so you can experience the ride not in its, like, you know, fun motion 4D kind of like your car shaking and you're going up and down kind of thing, but you can still experience it at home. So
That's cool. That's cool. That's really cool. That's awesome, though. I'm really glad they put that in. That's really cool. You know, because like, I do feel like the Back to the Future, like, the people behind it have such a love for the fans. You know.
Mm-hmm. Also, too, I think there was a really cool thing. I love Back to the Future, just like how I love Scream. I like burned the shit out of my DVDs and watched every special features and everything I could. Right before we were recording, we were talking about the Netflix show, the movies that made us, and we were talking about how we already knew a lot of the stuff in that show. But also in the special features, they have this really cool segment where I don't know if they still have it in the most recent ones, but though I think I have the 30th anniversary on DVD, and that one had fan questions, and they actually brought up a lot of questions about the series and story stuff, where they actually, I think Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis actually answered back. So when you watch it, you know, people will be like, hey, what about this plot hole? Like, how do you guys do this? And they kind of just make something on the spot and just go, well, Actually, it's because da 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 da. And it's kind of cool because they canonize like their own little extra like answers to people's plot hole questions. I think there is one plot hole where they actually just came out and said, "You got us. We didn't think about it, but I'm glad somebody pointed it out. Now it's gonna bug us for the rest of our lives." But I'm glad you guys loved it. But yeah, I love the series, so I'm just trying to give as much information as I can for you guys to experience it as well.
Nice.
No, yeah. I mean, it's a timeless series. I know that we're talking about the third one specifically because it is the one that's like not really recognized enough. Like while the whole series as a whole is recognized very much, it's the third one that kind of like doesn't get brought up too much. I know that like for my family too, like it took. I had seen the second one, pretty regularly. The first one I just watched recently for the first time in completion. I've seen bits
Oh,
and
wow.
pieces of it, but the third one was always the one like okay, like you watch the second one, and but then like yeah, I eventually watching the third one and yeah, it is a good movie. It stands on its own and um should be acknowledged too, like for the multiple reasons why we mentioned, like it is the first time that Doc and Marty are having an adventure together, like at the same time, the same time period people, and yeah, it's definitely thoroughly enjoy it. Like I think a lot of people do, but
Yeah.
I think it's also the funniest one, like out of the three.
yeah.
Personally, I think second one is absolutely the darkest. The first one is kind of like a great all arounder, but I always felt this one was the funniest one just because there's so many great lines. Like when they're hijacking the train, they're just like, "Oh my god, you guys like robbers, like bank robbers," and it's like, "What are you guys doing here?" It's a science experiment.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
And then again, like Doc, he's like, everyone's gone through heartbreak, and he's so sad, and he's just sitting in front of a shot of whiskey like the whole night. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious because like Marty's like, "Oh my god, how much has he drank?" He's like, "Nothing. He's been staring at his drink all night." And then he just takes a shot and he gets plastered after that one shot. And like, is there so many like funny, relatable moments? Like, oh, when he did like Marty's, they have their own little kind of like shoot 'em up game, like 1885 version.
Yeah.
And he's like, "You gotta hold it with your left hand, boy." And he's just like, "Oh, this is awkward, man." And he switches it, and then he's like, "Bah, bah, 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 bah," just like gunslinger, McCree from Overwatch kind of thing. And then he's just like, "Where'd you learn how to shoot like that?" He's like, 7-Eleven. And that just
Yeah.
always killed me because I remember going to 7-Eleven as a kid, and they had those cabinets there with the shoot 'em ups and you shoot the ducks and stuff, and which is really cool foreshadowing for anybody. If you watch Back to the Future 2, where they go to the future, they're in Cafe 80s, and you get to see the first film appearance of Elijah Wood at the arcade
Alicia
cabinet.
Wood. Did you say
Elijah, oh my god,
Alicia?
I was like, who
Alicia
the
Wood?
Elijah.
is this some kind of bit you're doing?
Sorry, no, my bad. I was like speaking too fast. I'm like
He
Yeah.
super
played
excited.
Frodo Baggins.
Frodo Begins.
You went all the way down to like the Aramaic pronunciation of Elijah.
My bad. I was just going too fast, but yeah, at least I would. And he's just like shooting, and like Marty's showing off his skills, and he's like, you have to. If you notice, he's shooting cowboys, and like it's a little foreshadowing to him playing the game in 1885. And then obviously it's a great bit as well where Elijah Wood, it's like you have to shoot, you have to use your hands. That's a baby's toy. But yeah, I just love all those little moments and stuff, and like I honestly think it's the funniest one. It always kills me, and like even when like he throws the pie, like the pan with the
Frisbee.
pie, and then like he looks at it, and then he goes frisbee far out, and then like Seamus is just like far out. It was right in front of him. That voice
Yeah.
not right. Like there's just
Yeah.
so many great jokes. Like I feel like this one, as badass as it is as a western, it's the absolute funniest one as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think a big part of that is that this movie is so good with payoffs that
That's
have
what I
been
was
set
gonna
up in the
say.
previous two.
Mhm.
And a lot of that is jokes, but also a lot of that is like, oh wow, so that's how it, like this was here, and now you get it does feel like, it's all planned, like especially the stuff from the second one. Like it's like this movie is so smart with the way how everything is important, and things you didn't think from the second one or even the first one that were just like kind of one-liners. They bring it all back. It's just this movie just is masterful, and that's why it's a great ending to a trilogy, because it makes you feel like everything that happened in the first two was really important and everything was paid off completely here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No. Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, well, thank you guys so much. I really, really appreciate you guys like watching it. Again, it's very close to my heart, just like Scream 2 was. This one, Back to the Future 3, my favorite Part 3 kind of film. And don't worry, Ariel, I love Return of the Jedi as well.
It's not a bad movie. It's just
it's not horrible. The only reason I like Empire a little bit more is because I don't like that stupid singing scene in the beginning of the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Didn't they
I won't
add
lie.
that? Isn't that an addition though?
It's in it, but it's a lot longer in the special edition.
Okay.
It's always in it, but they make it a whole thing in the special edition.
Sadly, it's the very, very, very rare times as a Star Wars fan where I kind of, when that scene comes on, I kind of have to just turn around or go on my phone because I'm just like, I can't watch this. I'm like, I love green lightsaber Jedi Luke, but I have to sit through that stupid ass scene. But that's the only reason. That's the only reason why Empire is a little better on my list. But anyways, thank you guys so much.
I also like Last Crusade too.
I love Last Crusade. Okay. I love Last Crusade. That one's but that's different because that's not a trilogy. Those are just a bunch of standalone movies,
You don't
That's
consider
true.
them trilogy?
No, because there's no story connection between Indiana Jones, the first one, and the second one, to the point, or the third one, to the point where like the second one is a prequel, but no one realizes it because you could really watch them in any order. And I guess you could argue that Indy does have character growth over like the 4 films. I think that's accurate. But really, like, there's no connection. They're all just kind of standalone adventures that Indy goes on, which is cool, which is fine, which I love. But it's not like Back to the Future where it's all one connected story,
Yeah, I didn't know that the second one was a prequel.
Yeah, exactly.
The second one is one that I have not watched a lot of because of it. Yeah, it being.
Yeah, no, it's the one I've watched of the original 3 the least. I would say it's not a bad movie, but it's nowhere near as good as the first and the third. The first and the third are perfect.
Yeah.
Like I will watch those 2 anytime, and especially I'm on the same page as you, where I love Last Crusade. It's my favorite.
And then 4 will probably be retcon in a few months.
No, it's not. 4 is going to be a part of it. Okay. No, they're gonna have a great ending with 5. I'm excited for 5.
Yeah, I'm excited for 5 too.
Yeah.
I wonder how they're gonna retcon.
I've seen Temple of Doom way too many fucking times. I hate it. I don't like Temple of Doom.
That's a fair assessment.
I feel like it's just on all the time. Like oh my god, Indiana Jones is on TV. Let me Temple of Doom. I'd rather watch the 4th one. I'll be honest.
Short Round is the only good thing. Short Round and
Kali no.
That's right. You don't like Short Round?
Oh no, I hate Short Round. He's so annoying.
He's not my favorite either.
No, I only like maybe the beginning of the movie where they're at Club Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was great, but
also like why is it a musical for like 5 minutes? Like it's weird. It's like
musical.
It's weird because it's like a fake reality kind of for like the beginning of that movie, and then they're like, oh, just kidding, none of that was actually it's weird.
In a long time. All I remember
is
Kalima, which is like a
Kalima Shakire. I'll still watch it. I'll still enjoy it. It just doesn't hit the same as 1 and 3.
Yeah. I want to go back.
No Time for Love, Dr. Brown. Dr. Emmett Brown. But yeah, no. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you everybody for listening to our summer of sequels. I was thinking as like maybe we had brought up the reboot thing, maybe next summer, the summer of reboots.
Ooh,
maybe some underrated reboots. Maybe we don't know.
We've done a couple already.
Yeah, we've done a couple.
We've already done. Is it The Evil Dead?
No, it's just Evil Dead. There's no the. It's like the Suicide Squad and Suicide Squad. They lost the. It's cleaner. And we did Pete's Dragon, which I fucking love. I just watched Green Knight. I'm like, God damn it, David Lowery does it again.
I was thinking of uh Dawn of the Dead, which was I thought was a great reboot remake, I guess. Because
Yeah,
now it technically is a reboot now with the Army of the Dead, which I haven't seen that yet. I heard kind of mixed things, so I'm kind of
that
like,
is really bad. it's borderline unwatchable.
I
I
love
went into
that
it over
fact.
the really wanting to like it, and
Well, I
I,
don't know. I haven't seen it yet. I know, for me, Zack Snyder is a mixed bag. So
yeah,
I'm gonna try to watch it, see how I am. I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna be like all hyped about it.
give it a try. I
I
did
know,
not do it for me.
I know you're kind of like you're already on the fence with Zack Snyder stuff too.
I like him, or I like his stuff. I don't like him, but I like most of his movies. But that one was his worst movie by a lot. I felt like that was
And it's
nowhere.
popular enough though,
Yeah,
because it's getting like a few prequels.
Like an anime prequel or something like that.
And then
they're making like a straight up they're making a straight up prequel to it without any zombies. I'm like, what? You're okay? What are you doing?
yeah, it's the
Oh,
Army of
come
Thieves.
on.
Yeah, it's about the only interesting character in it. They're making a prequel about him, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
well.
maybe though. We'll reboot this we'll reboot the summer series and do some reboots next year. That'd be pretty cool.
Watch the day after this comes out. We're rebooting Back to the Future.
Yeah.
And it's out next
So,
year.
so
We're like, oh shit.
in truth, I don't think they'll just because of the legacy of it alone,
Mhm.
let alone the legacy of Michael J. Fox. Like the only way that they could reboot Teen Wolf was to make it more of like a totally departure of Teen Wolf. So kind of like, so yeah, and you can't really do that with Back to the Future. I think the legacy of Back to the Future is too big for it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and like I think, like I had mentioned earlier, I think Bob Zemeckis was like, I own the rights. There's no fucking way you're gonna make it. You're gonna have to wait 100
Mhm.
years or so,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like 100 years till after I die. So we're in the clear.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
he's like has a clause in his like will or something. Like you cannot reboot any of my movies. Like speaking of movies that made us another episode of that is Forrest Gump, and you just get a full on like idea of who Robert Zemeckis is, for better or worse. But yeah.
I gotta
Yeah.
check it out. That's the only episode I haven't seen yet.
It's pretty
So I
good.
gotta.
Yeah. Man, Tom Hanks, man. He just is a trooper, man, on everything. You'll see. But yeah, it's definitely a good episode.
That's my dad's favorite movie because he thinks he is Forrest Gump. He's like, I was born in Alabama and I got drafted. I'm just like Forrest. I'm like, yeah,
He's
in
the
a lot of
closest,
ways.
I think. I've never met the man still, but he is. I would totally like, even just on your tellings of him and the brief videos that I've seen. I'm like, I could buy he's Forrest Gump. Does that mean that makes you Haley Joel Osment?
It could be worse.
Yeah.
One little quick story bit. I had went to. I used to live near Disney, and near Disneyland there was Bubba Gumps, and
hmm
I had never been there.
I still
All I
haven't
knew
been there.
about it was shrimp. That's all I knew. I was like, oh, it's like a fish place. And I walk in, and I walked in with some friends who were very, very big Forrest Gump fans. I had never seen Forrest Gump at the time. I didn't see it till I was like late teens, and I think like till my 20s. And I remember I walk in, and like the waitress, I guess they ask you trivia, and
Yeah.
she was like,
I've never been.
"Who?" Oh, yeah. Well, when you walk in, I guess like as kind of like it'd be like, hey, like, hey, how's it going,
Mhm.
guys? You guys seen the movie? And I was like, I had no idea, so I was like, man, I'm looking around the restaurant, and I'm like, dude, there's a lot of Forrest Gump memorabilia for some reason. I was like, I think the owner really digs that movie. And then all my friends are kind of flabbergasted, and then the waitress comes up, and she's just like, oh, what character did this, or what character got AIDS or something like that? What character got drafted? I was just like, and I'm just so shocked because I'm just like, why is this waitress asking questions about Forrest Gump? I was like,
So you had no idea what the theme of the theme restaurant you were in was?
No,
Just the
at
Gump
all.
of it.
That's like going to Rainforest Cafe and be like, what's up with these fucking monkeys and shit?
Exactly, dude. Exactly to the T. Like I was so lost, and my friends are like, "You never seen Forrest Gump?" And I'm like, "Why is that a big deal right now? I just want shrimp, dog." And I'm like, "Why are we talking about this?" And then they're like, "Okay, Bubba Gump's is a restaurant in the movie, and they made it real life." And I'm like, "Oh, I had no fucking idea. I've never seen the movie." I was like, "Okay, that's cool," but yeah, I thought it was a funny like experience. Like,
Yeah,
just
that's really great.
yeah, it cracked me up.
I don't know how I want to go just for the experience, but then I'm like, I don't know if I would want to do Forrest Gump trivia. I'm a good person about trivia, but Forrest Gump trivia, I've seen the movie in total like maybe twice because it's such a long movie. Um, the movies that made us kind of make me want it watch it a little bit, but it's a long movie. But yeah,
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, I mean, it wasn't like she was like, "You gotta do trivia." No, she was just kind of like, "Who's seen it?" And like, my whole party was like obsessed with it. Like, I didn't know they were like Forrest Gumpers or something, and like,
Gumpers.
they're like Foresters, and like they were just like, "Oh my god, yes!" And then they're answering questions, and I'm just like, what? Like looking around, so confused. I'm like, did I walk into like a portal or something, like a Forrest Gump universe? Because everyone's really about it right now. But yeah. No, but
That's
they're not
great.
gonna like force it upon you. They're just gonna be like, "You seen it? Yeah, I seen it. You want to do some trivia? Nah, that's cool."
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Before we wrap up, guys, I want to ask you what to kind of close out our summer of sequels. What's a sequel you just wish you could see that has not been made? Like, what's your ultimate sequel? Because I think for me, it's got to be. I would still love to see a Speed Racer 2. You know, like that's our first movie we ever covered. I'm still to this day kind of
Yeah.
salty that we'll never get another Speed Racer. That's my answer. What about you guys?
You drop these like existential questions that I'm not ready for.
Yeah, now I'm kind of like, oh man.
And the viewers, listeners, I mean, at home, like, write in, tell us, like, what's a sequel, like, what's your ultimate never happened sequel? You know, what's the sequel that should have gotten made, or that will never get made, or has never gotten made yet, at least, or it's been in developmental hell and you don't know if it's going to get made. I would love to hear from you guys. Write us in, you know, like, send us an email, or, you know, join our, like, let us know on Discord or Instagram or whatever.
Man.
I want to say this is the first because it is an episode that we've done before. I think it was this summer's uh a sequel to Tron Legacy. I think
Mm,
that's one of
Yeah.
my big
yeah.
ones. Yeah, Tron Legacy
Yeah.
sequel.
It's happening, though. It's happening, though.
Oh, okay.
So,
Cool.
Yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, allegedly. It's been supposed to happen for a while. It was on, then it was off, and now it looks like it's back on again. So I'm on the same page as you, Alan. Let's see that fucking Tron 3.
so since that one is being made, real fast then, I do have one, and I just realized because I'm wearing the shirt. This is Halloween 3. And for the viewers out or listeners out there, it's a Halloween 3 shirt, and it's like the jack o' lantern on the commercial. It's like, oh, 24 days till Halloween, and all that. Originally, the Halloween series wasn't supposed to be specifically about Michael Myers. They only made a sequel because everybody loved Michael Myers so much. But originally, the concept of the idea was making an anthology series. That's why we got Halloween 3, and so many people were confused that there was like, why is there no Michael Myers in the movie? Which technically he is in the movie, but it's in a meta way where characters are watching the first Halloween and Michael Myers shows up on a TV. So the movie exists in that movie in that kind of way, just how like, Evil Dead exists in Nightmare on Elm Street because they're watching Evil Dead. But I actually wished, in an alternate timeline, and a another 1985 maybe because I think this came out Halloween 3 came out before it. I would have liked to see a Halloween 4 that wasn't about Michael Myers and it was just continuing on the anthology concept of Halloween stories,
Mm,
Halloween anthology
Yeah.
film stories like with John Carpenter and everybody like backing it up because after I discovered Halloween 3, I was so because I had never seen it because it was kind of like one of those movies that kind of got shut off and like kind of like people were like, don't watch it, it's stupid because it's not about Michael Myers. And then when I saw it, I was like, dude, this is fucking awesome. And I did research about it. And then I realized it's like, oh my God, I would love a sequel, Halloween 4, that wasn't about Michael Myers, but it's the concept. So I think that would be a big one for me.
Hmm.
Cool. That's a really good idea. Yeah.
Okay, I had to look up like a list and stuff, but it sparked something very it's very random that but Elf 2, I don't know how. I don't know how I got the script, but I read the Elf 2 script. I still have it. And it was a really good script. And I liked the story. I read it and I was like, this is really good. I'm excited for it. Never happened. And I guess like Will Ferrell was like kind of like hesitant on it, didn't like the direction. I was like, I love this direction. I
Yeah.
actually really liked the story. Is like, you had classic Buddy. You had his daughter that was kind. It was like going to take place like when she was like preteen, so she was kind of like was getting like a bit um embarrassed by Buddy and how he was. They were like living in the suburbs and stuff, and then kind of like both his daughter and him kind of like learn lessons and stuff, and it's kind of like seeing Buddy as a dad, where in the first one he was like all trying to find his dad and stuff. I loved it. I really wish it did come to fruition, but it didn't. So that's one actually. Yeah, like I just got sparked by it, and I'm like, and then I'm a sucker for Christmas movies, like, so I really
Yeah.
loved it.
I love how our answers are like our favorite like holidays. Like I'm like, I want a Halloween sequel. And you're like, I want a Christmas one.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see what else we got. Like, let's see. There's like all these '60s movies. Yeah, but that's one that like, oh yeah, like I have the script still. Yeah, of course,
That's
famously
cool.
Spider-Man Lives. Kind of seeing Nick Cage, kind of like,
Oh,
That's
Superman lives.
that's not a
Yeah,
sequel. That would have just been. That's
that
just a
would
movie
have
that would
been.
never happen.
yeah,
I still would have been down for that. That's actually another
Yeah.
one I'd be so down to watch.
Superman Lives, not Spider Man.
yeah. Man,
Yeah.
there's like a lot of '60s
Yeah.
movies
No,
that
there's a
I
lot.
like.
Yeah. That's interesting. All right.
But yes, well, thank you again. Like we want to hear your answers in the Discord. We got a couple of people talking in Discord this week, and that was a lot of fun. I was unfortunately not able to comment because I just started a new job, so I was like, oh, okay. I was reading your guys' stuff, but I wasn't able to jump right in. But um, yeah, we want to hear your guys' answers. We want to hear what movies you think would be, or you wish you could have saw as a sequel, like Derek said. But now it's time for the plugs. So, you guys, go ahead.
Yeah, I have another podcast. I have a podcast that I host called "You've Never Seen?" Question mark exclamation mark. We just started our second season. Our second year, of movies. Where the first episode of the second season was me and Alan talking about him for his first viewing of Blade Runner, which is we kind of used as like a prequel or to the sequel of our discussion on Blade Runner 2049 in the episode before this one. So yeah, that was pretty fun, and that comes out on the first of every month. And just look out for the just search "You've Never Seen?" question mark exclamation mark, and look for the woman screaming in green.
And I've been guessing on a lot of the podcasts recently. I mentioned last time, I was on one called The Final Draft, where I got to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, one of my favorite movies. I was on a show called the Matt and Mark Show, where we talked about of something I finally got to see, talk about on a podcast, and I saw in theaters, which was The Jungle Cruise. I was just recently, as of today, we were recording on Friday the 13th. I was on a horror movie podcast called Killing Time, where we talked about our favorite psychological horror films. That was a lot of fun. And then coming out soon after this, I'm going to be on one called Movie Time Capsule, where we take about what questions about like what would movies would I preserve in a time capsule, for particular reasons. So I had a lot of fun doing that one. So listen to any of those ones. I had a lot of fun doing all of those shows.
Yeah, I did also guest on a podcast called Price Tag podcast. Then that one came out today. Actually, my episode came out today, and I had a really fun time on it. With Neasley. Sorry if I
Ainsley, I think his name is
Thank
Ainsley.
you.
I was on the show
Yeah.
too. Yeah, my episode's still upcoming.
Yeah. So I had a really good time. Loved the kind of like existential discussions that we had with it. So please definitely go and check that one out as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, you guys. I'm so glad you guys dug the movie, of course, Back to the Future. And I hope you guys dug the episode. I hope you guys dug the whole summer of sequels kind of little miniseries we had going on. Of course, we're going to be back with a lot more as per usual. So please, give us likes, leave us reviews, join us on the Discord, Twitter, um, all our socials. So we always love to hear from you guys. So yeah, I've been Alan Torres and my lovely host again, Ariel Ortiz.
Thanks for being amazing, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.
And Derick McDuff.
I'll see you guys in another life or in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Take it easy, y'all. Have a good one.